Welcome to another episode of InRange. I'm coming to you today with a very interesting topic, and it's one that I don't see being addressed very heavily anywhere else in the conversation, and I find that to be surprising. And that is the topic of anti-drone countermeasures, either at the individual or squad level, in whatever form of conflict you might find yourself engaged in. And as we're watching the horrors of the war in Ukraine unfold, one of the things we're seeing there is the extensive use of very cheap, simple drones, frequently just Chinese DJI drones, that are being weaponized by adding an improvised explosive device on the bottom, being flown over the enemy and dropping bombs on them. This, of course, is a huge step forward in the cyberpunk dystopian future that we now live in. And the truth is, drones like this one, this Holy Stone drone that I have right here, was under $170 on Amazon. We're at the point now where drones with 4K cameras and the ability to drop munitions on people are cheaper than groceries. That's a topic for another day. But the reality is this idea of drones being used in warfare is here to stay, and it is going to be used whether it is for the purposes of dropping high explosives on the enemy or using them for cheap and easy surveillance, whether it's troop movement, troop size, or for that matter, maybe not in a high conflict zone in which people actually are killing each other yet, but even in places of civil unrest. And so we're at the point now in which the discussion should be had about what are the countermeasures that can be used against drones like these. So first of all, there's a lot of footage coming out of the Ukrainian conflict, mostly from the Ukrainian side, from the drones dropping munitions on Russian invaders. And here's a piece of that footage right here. It's literally flying overhead, and the soldier can see and knows that the drone is there, and using his AK, or some variant thereof, is trying to shoot it down, but unsuccessfully. So he knows it's there, sees it's there, knows what it's going to do, but can't do anything really to defend against it. And that's the power of these small, little, tiny drones coming in at high speed, hard to see, hard to hit, and still capable of being lethal. Now, a lot of the footage coming out right now is coming out from the Ukrainian side for their purposes of just demonstrating the horrors of the war and what they're using these drones for. But the reality is this is going on in other places and on other parts of the world as well. Here's some footage from Myanmar in which 2 drones are being used as a strike against the enemy. One drone is being used for observation and a larger one is being used to drop munitions. In fact, we found a channel, CivDiv, who is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran and a Ukrainian SSO, a volunteer that's fought in the Ukrainian conflict on the Ukrainian side. And he states in his videos that they are actually invoking currently anti-drone measures. And in fact, the Russians are using drones against the Ukrainians, just like the Ukrainians are using drones against the Russians. And in this little snippet here, that very short little bit, he discusses the idea of having a dedicated anti-drone resource in your squad, hopefully armed with a shotgun, to make it possible, or at least easier, to neutralize a drone.
Shotguns and drone guards. So something that I think NATO militaries are going to incorporate. We already see Ukraine doing this, is having drone guards in their squad. And say he has a shotgun, which allows him to be a little bit less accurate.
At this point, it brings up an interesting question. These are here to stay, whether they're on your side or on the enemy's side. And they are so cheap and easily acquirable. And with the advent of 3D printing, you can do things to them and modernize them to be weaponized, to drop munitions or more. What do you do in a situation in which these things are being used against you? And we've seen already, as footage we show here, that standard small arms are not very effective against them. They're hard to see. And if you do basic math on 2 different videos that I show here in terms of when the munition is dropped and when it hits the ground, the average height of these drones when they're dropping them is approximately 50 yards. Or 150 feet, which is high enough with the naked eye. Something of this size or this size is actually quite hard to see. In fact, they're just idling up there, not even moving and dropping these things. But what if this thing is actually coming straight at you at high velocity? That's another topic as well. And in the process of thinking this through, we are thinking to ourselves, what kind of ammunition would you want to use to neutralize something like this? Merely putting a hole through a propeller is probably not going to do it. And so what's the 12-gauge ammunition that is most effective against a relatively far away target, let's say 50 yards, with enough penetration and enough of a tight enough pattern to neutralize something that is a lightly armored target? And the reality is that's already exists. Turkey loads. Here we've got standard birdshot, although high velocity. This is going to be 7.5 shot at 1,390 feet per second. Standard 2 3/4 inch shell. Then we've got a little bit more expensive, the Longbeard XR. This is a 1,200 feet per second, 1 3/4 ounce, 3-inch shell with 5 shot. So we have more mass, hopefully keeping together at a tighter group. And then we have this very expensive stuff. This is our last ditch. This is tungsten, heavyweight premium, 3-inch shell, 1,200 feet per second, 1 3/4 ounce, using 7 shot. However, it is also using flight control. So this should put a very tight pattern into the area. This has a little more mass and it's a 3-inch. And then we've got standard birdshot. So anyways, without more discussion, let's go ahead and get out to the range. All right, so we've got Sinistro Rifleman out here and we are at 50 yards. I got a steel plate, you can see it behind my shoulder. This is at 50 yards, the furthest altitude we're expecting to engage drones with. And we've got this. First, we're gonna start with birdshot because we've seen some people talk about using birdshot.
Right.
Doesn't seem plausible to me. Got a full choke, red dot, can't do better than that. And this is just standard 1,390 feet per second, 7/8 of an ounce, 7.5 shot. So let's go ahead and put one on the target. And let's see it do. I don't think it's gonna do anything. Okay, so there's pellets across the entire target, but there's huge gaps and there didn't look like much, let's put it that way.
All right.
So now we've got this Longbeard XR. This is a 3-inch shell, 5 shot, 1,200 feet per second, 1 3/4 ounce turkey load. So this will have more recoil, right?
Yeah, it'll have some oomph to it.
And let's see if, ooh, they even look bigger. Let's go. Okay.
Definitely hear impact on that.
I heard the target get hit and it actually rocked it. It moved, right?
Right.
Still a pretty big pattern, but it's the birdshot went across the entire plate, didn't do anything. This actually saw the plate move and it's right about here. Now that density looks like it could do something. All right, now we've got this stuff. This is the heavyweight TSS 12 gauge 3-inch tungsten flight control. This is 1,200 feet per second, 1 3/4 ounce, 7 shot, but tungsten with flight control. These are $13 a shot per round. So we're only gonna fire one at the plate. But let's see. Same kind of effect it looked like.
Yeah, looks like we saw impact down there.
Well, it's at this point where we would love to show you some footage of actually trying this in reality by flying drones and seeing how these rounds work on them in flight. However, in a work that's been in long progress, we've come to find out, and maybe we should have realized this before we even thought of this idea, that it turns out, as is so much the case with so many laws in this free country, that it would be illegal to do so for a number of reasons. You need a commercial drone operator license to be able to film any for-profit, whatever that means, footage with a drone. This being a YouTube channel, of course, and we are supported by viewers like you. That means that in theory, this video would be for profit because Patreon, etc. So I don't have a commercial operator drone license and I don't know anyone that does. And it's a pretty lengthy and challenging process to go through that. And even if you do go through that, then you'd have to prove that you have it if it's questioned. So that's a problem in and of itself. But above and beyond that, it turns out that the FAA has regulated or essentially associated drones, all of these drones, even these little things we're talking about here in this video, along the lines with any other aircraft. So to shoot down a tiny drone from Amazon that costs $100 is technically the legal equivalent of trying to shoot down a 747 jetliner, which of course would be a criminal act. So there are legality issues here in that we can't test these ideas for you in footage, and it explains why there's not really a lot of footage like that anywhere on YouTube. The reality is you can't. you buy your own drone on your own property and shoot at it with your own stuff safely, and you would be potentially running afoul of multiple laws. So we can't do that for you here, and if you're mad about that, I'm sorry, that was not our intent. Be mad at the system that has made it be what it is. Now, that said, I think we can still have a conversation, and we can look at the results that we got from the footage that I've already shown you here, in that bird shot at that distance, 50 yards, which would have been equivalent of 50 yards of altitude, had potential to be able to do something. And I think in the right circumstances, if you were lucky, it would work. But moving up to those 3-inch Magnum turkey loads, the standard one and the tungsten one in particular, showed so much more effect on the target that I would say that if you were going to need to do such a thing, it would be worth the investment, if you could, to use those turkey loads, as we postulated at the beginning of the video, for drone neutralization. However, it's become very evident that the idea of having dedicated anti-drone resources available to you in such conflict zones makes a lot of sense. This is not going to get better, it's going to get worse, whatever that means to you. And this idea of automated robots, whether they're flying or not, being used in weaponized context is the reality of our future now and to come. So at the same time, being able to neutralize something small like that, as we already demonstrated with footage from the conflict zone, with a standard rifle is quite challenging. We're seeing some dedicated designs coming out which are helping to mitigate the threat of drones, but I'm going to go ahead and say that in general, at least as it stands against these weaponized commercial drones, a standard semi-automatic shotgun with a red dot sight so that you can keep situational awareness, along with 3-inch Magnum turkey loads, particularly tungsten ones, even better with flight control, would do a pretty good job at neutralizing these devices. You don't actually have to destroy them to take them down, you just have to destabilize them. It doesn't take much to destabilize these, and the reason they're designed the way they are is that they are stable in flight. But if any one of those props is set off balance, there's a good chance that the device will crash. So I would love to be able to test that and find out for myself in reality, but we can't. But we can at least take the information we have and go from there and come to a reasonable conclusion based on the effect on that steel target. And that is my conclusion at this point. People have argued for a long time when it comes to trap and skeet that red dot sights are not the way to do that. But I have tried that in the past, and maybe that's a video for another day where we do trap and skeet with a red dot and without. That would be an interesting test. But I know personally from using a shotgun like this that a red dot sight does not hurt, but actually helps, just like it does in every other instance. Both eyes open, improved situational awareness, and the ability to engage something that's moving without losing track of it, such as in trap and skeet, is only benefited from a red dot, not deprecated. This is where we see like traditional sporting environments where they wouldn't allow a red dot sight actually holds back development of getting better at these things rather than improving them. So it's important for us to have environments where we can test such ideas and always improve these devices, whether it's for shooting down drones or just neutralizing trap and skeet targets for fun. Having places where that can be tested and always improving technology and moving forward with competition is beneficial. Having competitions that hold you back, well, hold us back. And we see sometimes a lot of firearms designs right now are held back based on the rules of popular sporting events, not based on the things that would actually make them better. Again, a bigger, broader topic. But in summary, I think we were right. So I apologize that we can't do more with this idea for this video, but I still think it's worth putting out. I think it's worth having a conversation, and I think the data we brought to the table here is still fairly conclusive. This was still an expensive video to do, even though we didn't get to actually neutralize any drones. That ammunition, as I said, was extraordinarily expensive, but it was interesting and fun to see its effect on the target. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Please consider supporting us via patreon.com/InRangeTV. This channel is supported by viewers like you. The kind of things we like to do and the things that we find interesting aren't the things that get highly promoted on YouTube, and of course firearms content in general is absolutely against the general algorithmic push. So if you can, once again, patreon.com/InRangeTV. If you already are, thank you. And if you can't, I mean, money is not infinite. The only thing you can also do for us is you can subscribe to the channel, but even more importantly, share this with your friends. Your comment below, sharing with your friends will help us defeat the algorithm and getting these kinds of interesting conversations out to a broader audience that otherwise would never see it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.